Hello and welcome to Town Meeting TV, and thanks for tuning in, I should say. This program is part of a series of candidate forums hosted by Town Meeting TV in advance of the Town Meeting Day election on Tuesday, April 8th, 2025. My name's Nick Tatakis. These forums are made possible by Town Meeting TV's generous underwriting partners. Thank you. You can find all our forums at cctv.org/TMD2025 or on our Town Meeting TV YouTube channel where auto-generated captions are available. And if you're tuning in on YouTube, click the subscribe button to stay tuned into local democracy this election season and beyond. On tonight's program, we'll hear from two incumbent candidates running for two uncontested three-year seats on the Essex Westford School Board. Those candidates are Robert Carpenter and Laura Taylor. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. If you're tuning in live, we welcome your questions at 802-862-3966. If you do call in, we'll do our best to prioritize your question, though we will screen calls to ensure questions aren't repeated. We ask that you share your name, the town you live in, and that you direct your question to both candidates. You can also submit questions for future forums online at cctv.org/TMD2025. All right, let's get started with the forum. We're going to start with opening statements, and I'll turn to Robert first. Robert, please tell us why you're running, how you're qualified to serve on the Essex Westford School Board, and what will be different for the school district if you are re-elected.
Sure. Well, it's great to be here tonight. I am a parent, I am a community member, taxpayer, and also I am a former math teacher. And I'm also a first-generation college graduate. But in addition to that, my day job, I actually work with school boards across the state of Massachusetts. I've been on the board since 2021, and I've had the privilege of being the board chair since 2023. And in that time, I've been really proud of being able to really lead the board through some challenging times, and it really takes a team. One of the things that I hope to continue bringing to the board is that passion for statewide advocacy, as we see many things happening across the state that we really need to activate as a district around. Continuing high levels of community engagement, especially around budgeting and around our superintendent search, which we did this year. And the big piece as well is continuing to really be a voice for all of those students that just need someone to be standing up for them. So I'm really excited to be able to be running for this role again and representing our community and most of all our students.
Wonderful. Thank you, Robert. Laura Taylor, your opening statement.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for having us. My name is Laura Taylor, and this is my first, the end of my first term as a school board member, and I've been the vice chair for the past year. And it's been a great learning experience being on the board, and especially being in a leadership position. I am also a proud public school teacher. I've taught Spanish in Milton High School forever, for 24 years. And I think I bring an interesting perspective to the board as a public school educator. And I'm, like Robert, really proud of the team that we have on the board. We've got a great group. We work really well together. And we've been through some challenging times, especially in regards to planning for budgets, and which is always, you know, in a good year, it is difficult. And then this year we also had a nationwide superintendent search, which was fascinating. And we have a really great new superintendent coming in July.
Wonderful. Thank you both. I'll have a question for you both later about that new superintendent. But first, I want to turn to a question about the school budget. So Laura Taylor, the Essex Westford School District has proposed a level-funded budget of $94.7 million. That did result in some cuts to services, but it did limit the impact on taxpayers. Do you support the school budget?
I do support the school budget. I know a lot of hard work and tough decisions went in, but I do think that we are presenting a budget to our community that protects the excellent education that our students are getting, and is also cognizant of the taxpayer burden. So,
wonderful. Thank you, Laura. Robert Carpenter, same question. Do you support the school budget?
Yes, absolutely. And I know this year was a tough year as well as last year. And when you look at school budgets, this year we had to cut $6 million. And cutting $6 million, walking out of that, no board member is going to be popular. And I think that if any of us walk into the budgeting season trying to be popular, cutting that much, we're going to fail. But I will say that this year we have had an unprecedented amount of community engagement. We did a budget survey which received almost 1,000 responses to that in terms of what do we need to prioritize in our budget. In addition to that, we also, through our superintendent search survey, were able to really glean what aspects about our budget do we really need to hold on to, what is most valuable to our district. And I'm going to say, like, there were parts of this budget that were absolutely painful and painful to parts of our community. And this is why, as elected officials, it can be so challenging, because we have to weigh all of that, all of the voices, all of the data, and make the most informed decisions to move forward. And most of all, that's, as an elected official, what we have to do. We have to make decisions. And sometimes those decisions aren't popular or thought of as not transparent enough. But I'm really proud to say that as a board this year, the amount and level of community engagement, the hours of meetings that we had with people, and the amount of research and thoughtfulness that went into this budget to not just make cuts, but find ways that we could actually expand certain areas while at the same time reducing costs and being responsible to our local taxpayer, is that cost-benefit analysis. But when you look at everything last year and what the state faced, we had to be responsive to our taxpayer and keep that first and foremost, while maintaining educational excellence for our kids. But I'm proud of the work that we did, and would hope for people to vote yes on this year's budget.
Wonderful, thank you, Robert. Now on to that question about the new superintendent. I'll start with you, Robert. The Essex Westford School District named Dr. Mark Holodick as the new superintendent. How will you use your role to support the superintendent to meet the needs of the Essex Westford School District students, family, and the community?
Sure. Well, first of all, I'm extremely excited about him joining our team and leading our district. We are really lucky to have him. And after a national search, going through many candidates, spending hours upon hours going into this process, it is just so rewarding to see the candidate that was able to emerge. There was so much community input that went into this, from staff to families to teachers to students. I'm really proud with the outcome. With all of that community feedback, it has provided us so much data to be able to hand him to transition into our district. And I think, if I continue serving as board chair, that would be one of my primary roles, is making sure that he transitions well into the district, working with him along with the board on his goals, making sure that those goals are manageable, that they're timely, and also that he is equipped and well-resourced to be able to accomplish those goals throughout the year. And also checking in on a regular basis to see how things are going, to make sure that he has the resources he needs to be successful. But most of all, it's connecting him to our community. And I think that that's what we as a board need to be able to do, is connect him to our community, to our stakeholders, and to everyone involved, so that he can really just build those trusting relationships so that we can lead that district forward. The other part, and honestly what I will say is I'm excited to partner with him in advocating at the state level and supporting him on getting up to speed on all the things happening statewide, so that we can really address some of the systemic issues as one of the larger districts in our state to really fight for public education.
Wonderful, thank you, Robert. Laura Taylor, same question. How will you use your role to support the superintendent and meet the needs of the school district community?
So what Robert said.
Yeah.
I think part of my role, especially if I were to continue as vice chair in a leadership role, would be to support Robert, to support Mark, to make those community connections. He's new to Vermont, but he has an extensive background. He's the former Secretary of Education of the state of Delaware. But as we know, Vermont is its own special place. And so I think, us helping him understand like what funding is like in the state of Vermont. What is our community? What are our values as a community? What do we want to see our district in 5 years? So I think just being available to support him in this transition, and really tapping on his expertise too.
Wonderful, thank you. I'll stick with you, Laura, for the next question. Kind of what you just alluded to about the vision for the future. I have a question about strategic priorities. How do you understand the strategic priorities of the Essex Westford School District, and what are you most aligned with and are most excited to work on out of these priorities?
I think as a board as a whole, we're very much aligned with the priorities of the district. One of the things I'm really excited about is our RTI model, which is response to intervention, and helping our students so there's the different tiers of intervention, and the district has put in a lot of professional development and a lot of work in helping our students at all levels. So tier 1 in the classroom, tier 2 more targeted, and tier 3 even more targeted. And we're really starting to see some great results. We've had some great presentations on literacy and math and how that intervention is helping our students. I'm really excited to see how that will continue over the next couple of years.
Wonderful. Thank you, Laura. Robert, same question. What are you most aligned with and most excited about in terms of strategic priorities?
Sure. I think for me, one of the most exciting things is the work that we did as a community, not just amongst staff, but amongst staff, stakeholders, community and business owners, and students and parents to define what do we want a graduate to look like when they leave our building. And through all of that work, while yes, we have mathematics, we have literacy, we have these other skills around financial literacy, around the civic awareness, and around just global citizenship. There's all these different aspects that we as a district have now defined we want to resource to be able to influence students and be able to give them these tools necessary to be successful adults. And that to me has just been extremely exciting to invest in as a board. But in addition to that, especially coming out of the pandemic, just academic recovery. And I know we'll probably get to this question in a little bit, but just seeing the amount of work that our staff has done with limited resources to bring students back up in their scores, to bring students back up where maybe more literacy intervention or math intervention wouldn't help, but the SEL was needed. And being able to identify that in students so that they can attend class, so that they can be in the building, so that they're not missing school. There are so many things this district is doing well, and I would say the biggest strategic alignment is to make sure that us and the administration is aligned on what are we resourcing, what are we prioritizing, and even some of the good things, having them push off a little bit to focus really on what are those things making the biggest difference, especially as we see a lack of resources coming into public education.
Thank you, Robert. It kind of is a nice segue into the next question where I'd like to zoom out a little bit and talk about the political climate at the national level. So given the current Trump administration's efforts to cut off funding for DEI efforts, diversity, equity, and inclusion, end immigration, and remove safeguards for transgender people, along with reducing funding for the Department of Education, what does the school district need to do to protect the community and individual civil rights?
Sure. So this is a question I get every day in my day job from school boards in Massachusetts, and one thing that we are really honed in on. What I will say is that we as a district have done a lot of work to make robust policies. And I know that that's kind of the work that's always thought of like, oh, that's the boring stuff at a school board, but it is the most essential because the robust policies that we have are for a time such as this, that they are put in place so that we don't have to be scrambling to make these policies and make these changes in a moment of crisis, but instead we are able to have them that clearly protect students from any background, from any demographic, from marginalized communities, so that they know that they can be safe and that they know that they are cared for and that they know they are valued for in our school system. In addition to that, we are really lucky to live in a state that we have an attorney general who, in partnership with multiple other attorney generals, wrote a multi-state legal opinion on the executive orders that we are adhering to in terms of what does this actually mean. It doesn't mean that funding is being cut off. It doesn't mean that you have to eliminate DEI. It doesn't mean any of these things at the moment because executive orders have to be implemented through policy. So we are really leaning hardly on our policies. But the biggest thing that I would just say from us is that we as a district don't want to be performative. That while you might not see us in the news talking about all these things, behind the scenes we are focused on the work. And that is the most important part, that a student seeing a letter going out saying that we support communities is not going to mean as much as us investing in the resources and time to make sure that those students feel safe and feel welcomed in our schools and communities. And that is what we want to focus our time and energy on because we don't want to be performative. We want to be impactful in caring for those students and staff.
Thank you, Robert.
Yep.
Laura Taylor, your thoughts on navigating this political climate?
Robert, you took the words right out of my mouth. No, I totally agree. The policies that we have in place and that we strictly adhere to are really helping us during this, let's face it, like this attack on public education that's coming from the national level. And you know, you can always fall back on your policy, right? Like, no, we're not this is how we do things and we're not going to do this. Again, really grateful to our Attorney General for the legal opinion that was written. I think we shared it at the board last week. And I think too, just like executive orders are not laws. I think we have a professional and a moral obligation to protect our students and their families and our teachers and all of our employees. And I think I think we do that through our policies, but I think too just sort of the environment that has been created. And I think part of that is just living in Vermont in a place that overall is very welcoming and very progressive.
Thank you, Laura. So we've talked a little bit about challenges facing our schools, and I want to ask you one specific question about what you think the biggest challenge facing the Essex Westford School District is, and how would you use your seat on the school board to address this issue? And I'll stick with you, Laura Taylor, first.
Yeah, I think, other than the budget, I think that's always just sort of a challenge. I think one of the biggest challenges we have, and I know I see this as a public educator myself, is the mental health crisis that we have and how schools are starting to take on more and more, what's the word I'm looking for? As services outside of schools are cut or dwindling, schools are taking on more and more of that. And I think it's really important that we acknowledge that a lot of this comes out of the pandemic, but also that it was, we were in a mental health crisis before that, and this sort of exacerbated it, and to provide our students with the support that they need in school if they are unable to obtain it outside of school or in addition to that. I think our social emotional learning programs have been really helpful for kids starting at a very young age. And I think the more open we can be about it and the more supportive that we can be of our students and everyone in our district, we can really start to see people feeling better and doing better.
Thank you, Laura. Robert Carpenter, your thoughts on the biggest challenge facing Essex Westford School District and how you would use your seat on the board to address it?
So I would agree with mental health, absolutely. And I think the main root of many of these things is the financial crisis that we are in education in Vermont. And I think specifically, just to name it, is the governor's proposal to how to overhaul education. I really believe that as a district with the staff that we have, that we can take on any challenge, even mental health, if we have the actual resources to do it. But right now, what we are facing is a lack of resources. And when you look at last year, our budget, we cut $4.5 million and we riffed people, and we still had a tax increase. This year, we cut $6 million. Parts of our community are still seeing a 9% tax increase. Next year, if the governor's plan were to actually go through, we would see at minimum almost $9 million in cuts to our district before any other inflationary costs. And as long as that continues to happen, then we are not going to have the resources needed to really care for our kids and provide for these systems. But more than that, especially in terms of that plan, we aren't seeing anything done about healthcare. And year over year, we're seeing nearly $2 million in increase in costs. That's just going to healthcare increases. So we're not able to put any of that money at all into educating students. It's just basically coming out of our budget, and we either have to decide tax more or cut deeper. And as long as that continues to be the process being run at the state level where we have zero control, then it will literally bankrupt our schools. So for us as a board, the really big thing and how I'd use my seat is that statewide advocacy to say this plan is not acceptable. We need a different plan because we need to be able to fund our schools to resource our teachers. And you can read about this in the Essex Reporter. They just put an article out today about what letter the board released in terms of how this plan would impact our school district. And I know other schools are doing the same. But until that is actually addressed, that funding crisis, then we are going to continue to face challenges that we can't have enough resources to fix.
Thank you, Robert. I'll stick with you, Robert, for a question about public safety, which I think is a topic that impacts and affects students, families, staff. How can the school district ensure the safety of its students and teachers and staff in our schools and in the community?
Sure. This is near and dear to my heart. My wife was on the playground when things went down at EES a long time ago, so public safety is huge. to us as an entire district. We are really lucky in our district to have Gary Scott and the work that he does to make sure that our students are safe, and the preventative measures and that he puts in place, and the steps that he has to take care of everything. We have an awesome district liaison officer through Essex PD, Sabrina. I know her personally. She's an incredible resource to the school district and reaches out to students in any type of need, or just like gives them a high five as they're getting on the bus. It's having these systems in place that is so important. But for us as a board, I think the other part too is we want to invest into safety and be proactive. We don't want to be the school district that's just reacting to crisis. We want to put in preventative measures and put in safety nets that aren't just about our students, but for the whole family. So when you're looking from anything to mental health, to different social services, to meals, like to anything that just mitigates these risk factors that could amp up public safety concerns in our school, we want to be able to address them so that they don't become a problem in the first place. And that's where we as a board are so reliant upon resources from the state, so that we do have the resources needed to support not just kids, but their families as well, so that we can really make sure that we have a safe, we have a welcoming environment, we have an environment that students feel like they can come to and be who they are. And by being able to have those preventative measures in place, that helps prevent the crisis of tomorrow.
Thank you, Robert.
Yep.
Laura Taylor, I'll turn to you for your thoughts on how to ensure the safety of students and staff.
Yeah, just to echo what Robert said, we have a really great system, and to kind of pivot off of that, it's not just the physical safety of the students when they're in our building, but it also includes their family safety, and what's happening outside of school and after school, and realizing that all of those things can impact a student's emotional safety and physical safety and mental safety while they're in the building. I think we have a pretty robust plan in like an emergency plan for all sorts of different situations that hopefully we'll never have to use, but it's there if we need it. And I know ours has been like other districts have borrowed ours, which I take some pride in. I know that the guys worked really, really hard on that. And just being aware of it, right? And just knowing that like this is the reality that we live in, and we have a duty of care to our students. And I think that doesn't matter if something happens in July or it happens on a weekend or after school, that our team knows how to wrap around our students and get them the support that they or their families might need.
Wonderful, thank you, Laura. The next question that I have for you both relates to something that you've both brought up, Laura, maybe more specifically, but that's about mental health. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious, how can the Essex Westford School District best support student mental health? Laura, you first.
Sure, yeah. I think by lots of different ways, continuing with our social emotional curriculum that starts very young, pre-K, having teachers and all the adults who work with our students to be really well trained in that and to know what to look for, because sometimes it can just be one little thing that you notice and say, hey, I want to follow up with that kiddo, like something doesn't seem right. Can you ask the question again?
It's just the way that you can best support student mental health. Yeah, you're doing great.
And I think making sure that our schools have the resources, right, and really protecting those resources in our budgets. We're really lucky to have some Howard Center clinicians in all of our schools. I have them in my the school that I work in too, and they do amazing work. But for every, we probably, I think 2 in every building or 1 in some of our smaller buildings, we could probably have 10. And I would eventually like to see us get to the point where mental health isn't a stigma. It's not something that makes people uncomfortable about talking about, that we accept it. We accept that, kids can have mental health challenges too, and that we put in the systems and protect the systems that we have and add more to keep everybody well.
Wonderful. Thank you, Laura. Robert Carpenter, I'll turn to you for your thoughts on the way we can best support student mental health.
Sure. I think this is near and dear to my heart as well, because my wife is a crisis clinician in a designated agency here in county, and she sees what happens. And when we see DMH making cuts at the state level, ultimately reducing the amount of mental health services in the area, us as schools are left with the option of, do we support our kids in this area, or do we just not have that service? And we don't see it as a district as an option to say, we don't have this service, we can't provide for these kids. So we are really looking for the resources to do that. But in addition, I've been really excited this year, even in a year where we are cutting in the budget, we've been able to expand in certain areas to actually bring students back into the district. So there's many different areas, such as our ARC program, where students in high school were having to be sent out of district for services that we didn't have in-house. But we were able to expand that program and work with our agency to be able to do that and expand into our Summit Street School to be able to have that program for younger kids and older kids and just be able to have that. The other part that we're able to have as well is we're partnering with local private providers. And this is kind of an out-of-the-box thinking, but so many times we hear people saying, I can't find anyone for therapy. I can't find anyone to go to. I can't pull my kid out of school in the middle of the day. But our district has really been working hard to find private providers to actually come into the building and provide mental health services to students in partnership with the Howard Center clinicians and in partnership with the ARC program as well. So it's been really exciting, and I'm just really supportive of that work to provide something that is near impossible for many people to find in this day and age just because of the lack of providers. So I'm really excited to be able to expand that and just as a board know that we're going to support it even if that's difficult to do.
Yeah. Thank you. I think we have time for one more question before we close up. Can you believe it's already
Time
almost
flies.
time? And maybe it's a question that looks on the brighter side of things. It's about measuring success. Last year's standardized test results suggest that the proportion of Vermont students proficient in math and English decreased during the pandemic and has not made significant improvements since. How do you measure success of the school district? And Robert, we're going to start with you.
Sure. I think for me, what I just want to name is Vermont is actually doing really well. And I know the narrative out there oftentimes is Vermont is terrible or the schools are terrible. Well, everything was terrible during COVID. That's the reality of what it was. But as I was mentioning before, the school has made a lot of progress to move things forward and a lot of progress for recovery. And the big part of that has been that we actually haven't seen data from AOE for this year. So we're working off of data from last year, but as a district, our staff have done an excellent job, and we are actually ranked near highest in the state for both mathematics and literacy, multiple percentage points across above the rest of the state. So being able to look at that, but then also how that partners with our SEL curriculum and just overall the whole learner, that we are being able to support them and to see them be lifted up in the educational system has been awesome. But I think for me as a board member, you know, as a former math teacher, my job is not to say like, okay, this is what you need to do in 8th grade math, this is what you need to do in 12th grade math. Instead, it's just to ask the question, all right, here's the problem. You know, superintendent and everyone else, how are you going to fix this? And then our job as a board is to then say, all right, is this working? What resources do you need? And that's really where the heart of the board work comes in. That's where governance comes in, that we're looking at the data, but then also saying, what do we need to do to resource this to make this happen? So.
Thank you, Robert. Laura Taylor, your thoughts on measuring success for the school district?
I kind of pivot off something else that you said, my friend, that Vermont kids are not doing badly. Vermont kids are showing progress and moving more towards proficiency, and I think that's a really important thing that I want to get out there. Like they're growing, right? They're making growth. They're making these jumps, and it's going to take a long time to get over COVID. I see that again myself as a public school teacher, and I think providing our amazing educators the resources and support that they need. They're the experts, right? Like they know what their students need. And being supportive of that as the board is really, it's kind of like what we do, right? Like I think it's why we're there.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your insights, both of you. I want to give you about 30 seconds or so to provide a closing statement, and we'll start with you, Laura.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you for having me, and just like to thank the board, my fellow board member Robert, and the rest of the board. Like I said earlier, we've got a great crew, and I'm really proud to work alongside all of them, and it has been one of the great honors and privileges of my life to serve on this school board, and I look forward to another 3 years and all the work that we'll do together.
Wonderful. Thank you again,
Thank
Laura.
you.
Robert, your closing thoughts?
Well, I just want to say thank you to the voters of Essex. I hope that the work that I do stands for itself in terms of when you vote when you cast your ballot at the voting booth. But most of all, what I would just say is like this past year, it's been about 30 hours of volunteer work a week on top of my regular day job doing this, but it is absolutely worth it on behalf of our kids. We have to do the work because they deserve this. And what I will just say to our voters is that we cannot do this alone. We ask that you would support us in voting for this budget, but that you would also support us with the things happening at both the state and the national level. We are in this together for our kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you both.
Yeah.
And thank you for tuning in to Town Meeting TV's ongoing coverage of local candidates, budgets, ballot items. You can find this and many more forums at cctv.org/TMD2025 or on our Town Meeting TV YouTube channel. And don't forget to cast your ballot on Town Meeting Day on or before April 8th. And then we will know the results of a few races, including this one, which will be exciting to find out how that turns out. You can contact your local clerk to find out how to obtain a ballot and to register to vote. And remember, in Vermont, you can register to vote on Election Day. Thank you for watching and sharing Town Meeting TV. Good night.